In A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, Stanley Kowalski asks his wife Stella and later his sister-in-law Blanche DuBois if they have heard of the Napoleonic Code. While Stella is oblivious and slightly confused, Blanche is dismissive and changes the subject. Stanley is more than a little insistent. What is the Napoleonic Code and why is it important? What happens in the play? Blanche is newly arrived from the DuBois family home Belle Reve in Laurel. The house has been repossessed after a number of debts and expenses that Blanche attributes to the cost of funerals. Blanche says she has been given a leave of absence from her teaching job because of her nerves. She has come to stay with her sister and her husband in their small New Orleans apartment. After Blanche accuses Stella of abandoning Belle Reve to come to live in New Orleans, she breaks the news of the loss of Belle Reve. Stella is shocked, and after Blanche descends into a long monologue about the pain and suffering she has endured, Stella has no room to react. Instead, Stella avoids the situation and excuses herself to use the bathroom. Stella is upset, but the conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Stanley and Mitch. Stella remains in the bathroom as Blanche introduces herself to Stanley. At the beginning of Scene 2, Stella breaks the news to Stanley, telling him that Belle Reve has been lost. Stanley is surprised and wants to see evidence of the sale. Stella keeps changing the subject to the delicate emotional state of Blanche. She provides Stanley with a number of reasons why Blanche should not be bothered. Stanley is insistent, demanding to see the papers. He then asks Stella if she knows about the Napoleonic Code. Stanley tells her that in the state of Louisiana the Napoleonic Code means that property that belongs to the wife also belongs to the husband. Stella tells Stanley her head is swimming, suggesting she is unable to process what he is saying. He tells her he will ask Blanche if she knows about the Napoleonic Code. Stanley feels that Stella has been swindled by Blanche, who has bought expensive clothes and jewelry while Stella has none. According to the Napoleonic Code, if Stella has been swindled, he has also been swindled. Stella brushes aside Stanley's concerns and tells him to ask Blanche about it later. When Stanley asks Blanche, she does not engage with the discussion of property, ownership and rights. Instead, Blanche compliments Stanley, which causes him to become distracted by what he considers to be Blanche flirting with him. Context: the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution allows states to have individual laws beyond the scope of the federal government. What is legal in one state might not be legal in another state. The Napoleonic Code is a part of the history of Louisiana, the state in which New Orleans is located. Louisiana was initially owned by the French until it was purchased by the United States in 1803. When the state was owned by France, it was developing a legal system based on French law, which was enacted after the purchase by the United States. While Louisiana law is influenced by aspects of the Napoleonic Code, it also contains Spanish legal traditions. In 1825, further changes were made to Louisiana law, but elements of the Napoleonic Code remain part of the legal system. The Napoleonic Code is concerned with civil law and involves a number of aspects. As far as Stanley is concerned, it is the traditional and updated aspects of inheritance and legal right of ownership that is important. One aspect of the Napoleonic Code is a married couple's rights and states that after marriage, the individual property of one becomes the joint property of the couple. Stanley is concerned with Belle Reve because Stella's rights to the property have been transferred to his shared ownership after they have been married. Given the limits of Stanley and Stella's New Orleans apartment, the idea of Belle Reve as a large plantation house would suggest wealth and luxury. Why is it important? Stanley's knowledge of the law appears to be greater than Stella or Blanche's knowledge. His sweeping application of the Napoleonic Code gives him, as Blanche suggests, an impressive judicial air, but displays a larger ignorance of its importance. While Stanley's explanation of the Napoleonic Code to Stella causes her to be overwhelmed and frustrated, Blanche's compliment undermines his authority and causes him to become annoyed. Stella does not appear to be able to deal with the idea of Belle Reve being lost, providing Stanley with an opportunity to stand up for his wife in marriage, but also his self-interest. When it comes to the loss of Belle Reve, Blanche is evasive and controlling. Before she tells Stella about the loss of Belle Reve, Blanche subtly blames Stella by reminding her she left, abandoning Belle Reve. Blanche emotionally manipulates Stella. And while Stanley appears to be looking out for his wife's best interests, he discusses the Napoleonic Code more with Stella than Blanche. As Stanley tells Stella, she has been swindled and, when you're swindled under the Napoleonic Code, I'm swindled too. And I don't like to be swindled. The loss of Belle Reve is a challenge to Stanley's superiority and feelings of entitlement. After all, Stanley is claiming ownership of property he has never seen. The reference to the Napoleonic Code represents the conflict between the assumed entitlement of the DuBois and the modern expectations of the Kowalskis. Stanley attempts to use an established system to assert his status, but fails. The audience is provided with a performance of the conflict between Stanley and Blanche, with Blanche manipulating Stanley. After Blanche's flirtatiousness distracts Stanley from the Napoleonic Code, he returns to the topic rather sheepishly after he has been overwhelmed by a monologue from Blanche during which she hands him all the legal papers. Stanley does not understand the documents himself, claiming he will have an acquaintance look at them. He finally makes a petty reference to Stella being pregnant. Stella specifically asks Stanley not to mention the pregnancy, and he is exacting a minor revenge at the expense of his wife. Conclusions. Williams includes Stanley's references to the Napoleonic Code to show him asserting his perceived rights. Stanley uses the Napoleonic Code to establish his authority over Stella. When applied to Blanche, Stanley does not have the same results and finds himself outmatched and pushed into an inferior position. By evoking a 19th-century legal approach, Williams is drawing the audience's attention to feelings of entitlement and different approaches to the past and future, while also highlighting tension between Blanche and Stanley. Thanks for listening. What you think about the play? Leave your comments below.